They don't croon ballads of the sort of evil that lurks behind gold and authority. Not here. Not under this scorching sun. Here, wickedness doesn't scream. It waits. Softly. Patiently. Like a coffin with the lid halfway open, taunting someone foolish enough to pry it. And that morning, Caleb Thorne was the one who opened the door. It was a heavy, gasping dawn in Tombstone, Arizona. Caleb climbed out onto his porch, coffee seething in one hand, the groan of old wood sounding beneath his boots. The land rolled endless, silent, not a breath of wind. He'd thought he was out to inspect the livestock, but what he discovered was something much worse. Along the fence lay a wagon, old and weathered, no driver, no tracks, only dust, stillness, and a tied mule in front of a post, chewing on nothing, like it had waited an eternity. Caleb's forehead furrowed, and then he noticed it. Under a ragged canvas, a shape, a delivery, a note knotted in the rope. Just 3 words, paid in full. But Caleb hadn't placed an order. And no one delivers property without a designation, without a knock. He moved nearer, and the odor struck him. Sweat, blood, and something else. Something age-old. Something rotten. He pushed back the canvas. There she was, a girl barely 20, dirty, bruised, her breathing shallow, as though her body didn't know whether it wanted to remain alive. Her wrists raw and tied, her lips parched. On her back, deep, intentional scars. She woke up, eyes empty, looking at him like one who had already seen death. And she whispered, "You paid for me. Now end it." Caleb didn't say a word, didn't even blink. He just looked. Because the reality is, hell doesn't reside on a battlefield. Hell resides in moments like these, when a shattered human is left on your doorstep, and somewhere in the world, a man thinks he's just done you a service. Caleb released her wrists. He picked her up, carried her in, set her down gently in the corner room. And for the first time in years, Caleb Thorne had no idea what to do next. But let me caution you. If you think this is just a story about a stranger who gets left on a rancher's porch, you're not prepared for what she brought with her. Her name was Eliza. She said very little those first days. She slept like a person who wouldn't dare keep her eyes closed for too long. Caleb didn't push. He'd existed among the silence long enough to understand that it had its own heaviness. Rather, he let her alone. A warm blanket, food close by, water in a metal cup, and he never crossed that room unless she required him. Patience is a difficult thing, and sometimes it comes with a sense of guilt as well. He witnessed her scars once more when he had to change her bandages. They were not random. No, someone had marked her slowly, purposefully, like they were writing on her body. On the 3rd evening, she got up alone and sat close to the fire. She stared at the flames, daring them to respond. Caleb sat close by, drinking coffee in silence. And then, in a voice weary and gentle, she spoke. "You didn't touch me." Caleb glanced up, nodded once, added another log to the fire. His tone low, nearly to himself. "I ain't most men." That was it. No speeches, no music, just the truth. The days came and went. Gradually, Eliza started moving like a person taking back bits of life, brushing the horses, washing dishes, and Caleb woke up one morning to hear something he hadn't anticipated, her humming. A soft melody. Not one that he recognized, but it was life. And in that instant, he understood this wasn't about feeding a stranger. It was about seeing a soul fight its way back from the brink of a hole no one else could perceive. But if you believe that healing comes in a straight line, you're about to learn just how wrong that is. Because the evening Eliza at last broke her silence, she didn't do it at dinner. Not during the day. No, it was late, when the fire guttered low and the coyotes were silent. Her voice little more than a whisper, but hard enough to cut. She spoke just enough to Caleb, enough to make his jaw lock hard. She'd worked in the county official's home. At first it was tolerable, clean attire, late working hours, but honest labor. Then there was the gaming, the debts, and when the official had no money to pay, he gambled something that he believed he might lose. And on one night, Eliza was taken away, bound, branded, treated like nothing so much as a poker chip on a table operated by devils. That mark on her back, it wasn't accidental. It was a word, cut, letter by letter with a knife. One word designed to take away her humanness. Worthless. Caleb did not respond. He simply sat, gaze on the flames, but inwardly something blazed more fiercely than the fire. He'd fought wars, witnessed men gutted and abandoned to die. And this was not war. This was cowardice. And it was occurring under the same flag he had bled for. Eliza regarded him then, struggling for words, for anything. He provided none. But he didn't. Instead, he rose, stepped outside into the crisp desert night. When he came back, there was ink on his hands and a letter on the table. A letter to an old soldier friend down in Tucson, a man who now held influence in the garrison. Caleb didn't require fists. He didn't require a gun. What he required was evidence. And Eliza's scars, they were evidence enough. For the first time, Eliza saw something light up in the blackness. Not a smile, not happiness, but hope. The small, quiet hope that someone thought her suffering was worth putting on paper. And that was the beginning. I know what you're thinking now. Where does it go? What happens when Caleb's silent fury finally coalesces? Bear with me because you're about to find out. 7 days later, the desert sent them a visitor. Not the nice kind that tips his hat or knocks politely. This one came riding in at sundown, dust kicking behind his horse, hat low on his face. Trouble. You could smell it on the breeze before the man even opened his mouth. Caleb saw him from the porch, his chest constricted, that old tension coming back like an unwelcome memory. The rider shouted as if he owned the place, inquiring whether the delivery had arrived. Not her name, not even woman, just delivery. That was enough for Caleb. His jaw clenched, his hand resting near his hip. He didn't unsheath, not yet. The man slid from his horse, boots landing hard on dirt, eyes darting to the cabin window where Eliza stood unseen in the shadows, breathing short and fast, shoulders shaking. Caleb offered him no greeting, only silence, that thick, menacing silence. And then the man took a step forward toward the door. That's when Caleb acted.
No threats. No oratory.
One swift step forward, his fist clenching the man's collar, the icy pressure of metal jammed under his chin. The battle was done before it had begun. Caleb didn't kill him. He didn't have to. Within seconds, the intruder was gagged, wrists bound with coarse rope, writhing on the cabin floor. Eliza didn't clap, didn't grin. She simply sat in the corner, her eyes wide with incredulity as someone, finally, stood between her and the men who played with her life like it was a poker chip on a table. Caleb pulled the stranger outside, tied him to the post, and waited for sunrise. Because the desert likes to teach its lessons to men. Out here, pride always collects. And if you believe that they get one man stuck to a post and that ends it, you're mistaken. When power is threatened, it does not retreat. It bites. And that bite was already in motion. When the morning came, riders rode on the horizon. Troops out of Tucson, a cloud of dust behind them. Caleb gave them the man, beaten and bound, and the letter he had written days ago. The soldiers did not ask questions. They saw the shame written clear as day on the captive's face. Eliza stood in the doorway, seeing the riders recede into the open horizon. For the first time, she felt it. The burden wasn't hers alone anymore. Someone had been there with her. Someone had heard. The days afterward, they were different. No longer awaiting boots on the porch. No longer fearing shadows in the window. She cooked. She worked the land. And once or twice she even laughed. A sound that surprised her as much as it surprised Caleb. He didn't say much, just did his chores. But silence between them was different now. It was no longer oppressive. It was peace. One night, beside the same fire where she had softly made her shattered plea, Eliza spoke. She informed Caleb she wanted to remain. Not because she had no place else to go, but because, for the very first time, she did have a choice. Caleb did not reply immediately. He merely nodded slowly, the sort of nod that said more than any words. Out on that ranch, away from politics and greed, two battered hearts found something to hold on to. Healing does not always look like thunder or blood. It can come quietly, in the murmur of water boiling on the stove, in the scars that hurt a little less, in the decision of a man to listen rather than to order. Perhaps that's what we forget. That strength is not always in the gun you pull. It's in the compassion you show when the world demands brutality. And perhaps the scars we bear, however deep, are not the end of our tale. They're the evidence we kept moving. So I have to ask you, if you were standing in Caleb's shoes, would you have yanked that canvas back? Would you have brought her inside? Or would you have looked the other way like so many others? If this tale touched you, be sure to like the video and subscribe. It keeps you here with us by the fire, where the tales of the Old West remind us not only of who we once were, but of who we can still become. For it was never about land and guns out there. It was about people, broken, brave, and still standing.